Mm. Hello, how are you today? This is Mark Ginsberg, and welcome back to our weekly Chrysalis, the Family Adventures podcast. We're now still in the courtroom, and we have come to our third and very crucial and consequential episode 56, Standing Their Ground for Justice Against Humiliating Assault by an Adult. The scene opens in a tense Los Angeles courtroom where Officer Justin Bradock stands trial for alleged misconduct and sexual assault against two minors, Kamala and Samantha, who testify that after being arrested during a protest that spiraled out of control, Officer Bradock separated them from the other protesters, handcuffed, and forcibly led them into a private room, where he humiliated them by stripping them and sexually assaulted them, leaving Samantha especially traumatized, painting a tense and emotional portrait of trauma, justice, and the pursuit of truth. Judge Carmichael works to maintain control of the courtroom as both attorneys, Prosecutor Watkins and Defense Attorney Stern, push the limits of examination, affirms the illegality of Braddock's actions, and advises him to seek counsel before further statements. Watkins treats the girls with compassion, affirming their courage. During cross-examination, the defense lawyer, Stern, looks for a history of abuse in Kamala's past, seeking to undermine the victim's credibility, suggesting their trauma or confusion may have distorted their recollection. Judge Carmichael does a quick reality test on the plaintiffs and concludes a deep search unnecessary on cross. The witnesses maintain their account, emphasizing the terror and humiliation they endured while questioning the officer's character and decision-making. The judge insists on focusing strictly on factual events without subjective opinions. Kamala and Samantha recount their experiences calmly, but firmly explaining their rights to peaceful protest and their shock at the wrongful arrest and abuse. The defense tries to discredit their testimony with questions about their behavior at the protest, the chaos at the scene, and their memory reliability under stress. Samantha is clearly showing discomfort, but bravely echoes her partner's story, describing the officer's aggression and her feelings of terror and outrage. She expresses deep emotional fallout, alienation from friends, loss of innocence, and gratitude for Kamala's unwavering love and support. Stern then cross-examines her, attempting to discredit her by highlighting inconsistencies, questioning her emotional state, and even implying that her trauma was pre-existing or imagined. However, the judge recognizes the trauma they suffered and acknowledges their courage. As the exchanges grow heated, Carmichael steps in again, demanding focus on facts over insinuation and empathy for the young plaintiffs. Despite the tension, Samantha remains steadfast in her testimony, reaffirming the truth of what she endured. The court recesses for lunch, highlighting the continuing legal struggle of the two minors seeking justice for the abuse suffered at the hands of Officer Bradock, the air thick with unresolved tension and the weight of justice still hanging in the balance, underscoring themes of alleged police brutality, injustice, and the fight for accountability in a tense courtroom setting. This courtroom drama is a critical episode in the larger narrative of Chrysalis, the Family Adventures, blending personal trauma with social justice issues. And now, without further ado, let's hear episode 56, Standing Their Ground for Justice Against Humiliating Assault by an Adult. Fade in, voiceover, previously on Chrysalis, the Family Adventures. Internal, courthouse, courtroom 802, day, bailiff. Court 802 is now in session. The People versus L.A. Police Officer Justin Bradock. Cut to Watkins. Miss Jackson. Cut to. Tell me what actually happened in the room after you both found yourselves alone with Officer Bradock. Kamala. We were both frightened out of our wits. Cut to. He said, "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" and slapped the cuffs on me. Cut to. I was trying to be cool and just protect Samantha at that moment. Cut to. I kept telling Samantha to just go along and cooperate. Cut to. But you see what happened. It didn't matter. Cut to. He just pulled on our arms and led us, unable to resist, into the room. Cut to. He yelled, "Come on, ladies, I don't have all day. I've got 1,000 other people to arrest and book." Cut to. He pulled our pants down, both of us. Cut to. We dared not try anything to upset him, except when he humiliated us by ordering us to get naked while alone with him, which even Samantha knew was a crime. Carmichael, banging down gavel forcefully. Making two minors undress is not proper procedure and is in fact a form of sexual coercion that is an illegal act, even if physical assault never occurred. Cut to. You will be charged in violation of Penal Code 2644. I suggest you seek counsel before saying any more. Cut to. Kamala. Officer Bradock just stripped us and then raped us with a stick. 2 sticks, one in each of our rears. It was completely humiliating for me and completely traumatized Samantha. Cut to Watkins. That'll be all, Miss Jackson. I'm sorry to have put you through this. Thank you for your testimony. Kamala, as she steps down. That's quite all right. You've done me and my partner an incredible service, for which I thank you. Caption. And now, continuing on in and out of the cocoon. Theme music / display. Caption. The family adventure continues. Carmichael. Miss Stern, do you wish to cross-examine the witness? Stern. Hesitant a while, then. Much as I'm reluctant to have to take up more unnecessary time questioning a witness who's going to editorialize everything, I would like to establish the background of the two accusants, as it is well as there are cases documented in the psychiatric literature demonstrating that people with early childhood trauma often experience both hallucinations as well as denial. Carmichael, breathing out heavy, displeased. Miss Jackson, please step forward. Kamala. Yes, Your Honor. Perplexed, Kamala gets up and walks to the bench. All of Carmichael's questioning is like rapid fire. Carmichael, holding up both hands, fingers open. How many fingers do you see? Kamala, taken aback with surprise. Huh? 10. Carmichael suddenly closes both hands into fists. How many? Kamala, none. Carmichael, partially opening 4 on her left, 2 on right. How many now? Kamala, 6. Carmichael, what time did you get up this morning? Kamala, we set the alarm for 6:30, but it was probably 6:45 by the time we got out of bed. Carmichael, I see you were eager to get here. Kamala, oh, we were very eager, just tired. Carmichael, what time did you leave the house? Kamala, about 7:30. Carmichael, and what time did the bus leave? Oh, it was like us. It was set for 8:30, but probably didn't leave till 8:45, maybe 8:50. Carmichael, thank you. Continuing her rapid fire. Miss Stivic, what time did you awake? Samantha, blinking. 6:30. Carmichael, were you alone or with somebody? Samantha, I was with Kamala. Carmichael, when did you eat? Samantha, oh, I don't remember. Does this mean, Carmichael, it doesn't mean anything. Forgetting a small detail doesn't mean you can't know clearly what happened to you on the date of the incident. Does 7:30 sound about right? 15 minutes getting up and about 45 minutes getting ready? Samantha, yeah, more or less. Then we had to make ourselves up. Then we had to make ourselves up again to look good for the court. I remember the bus was about 8:30. Carmichael, did it leave at 8:30? Samantha, well, Kamala just said it left late. I remember it that way too. Carmichael, all right, that's enough. You may have a seat, Miss Jackson. I'm satisfied as to the clarity of the minds of the two plaintiffs and witnesses. A deep search into their backgrounds is as unnecessary as a deep search into the history of the defendant. Miss Stern, you already have absence of evidence in your favor. Please question Ms. Jackson with regard to only the facts of the case, the incident that happened from the moment of the arrest until the plaintiff's release from being held. Stern. Ms. Jackson, when you were asked before if you were told the reason for your arrest, you stated not directly, and then you denied you were informed of the charges. Can you please explain what you meant when you said not directly? Did you find out through somebody else? Watkins, rising to his feet. Objection. This is both speculative, and Ms. Jackson clarified her initial answer to my question when she stated, no, he did not. Stern. I am very concerned that this sudden change of answer, as well as the vagary of her first answer, might reveal a lack of authoritative credibility on the witness's part. Carmichael. Ms. Stern, I think we can allow a degree of vagary in the answers witnesses give, especially if they are minors who are untrained in the specifics of legal language and they convey what actually happened. There's no need to revisit this question again. If Ms. Jackson is trying to conceal something, it will come out in her testimony. If anything, her problem is her excess, that is, her saying too much. Please proceed with your questioning. Stern. Miss Jackson, were you ever separated from your partner during the entire time from the moment the cuffs were first placed on you until you were released? Kamala. No, I wasn't. Stern. So there's no way any of the officers, including Officer Bradock, told your partner the reason either? Kamala. Correct. Stern. Miss Jackson, you stated, as I have in the notes I took during your questioning, that Officer Bradock assumed you were the aggressor when you grabbed hold of your girlfriend's arm to pull her back. How do you know he assumed that? Carmichael. Ms. Stern, I think we covered that already. Stern. Ms. Jackson, when you were asked if you were given a reason for your arrest, you said no, you weren't, but upon further questioning you said, looking at notes, he claimed to be searching for drugs and other contraband. Your words. Isn't that a reason? Kamala, Watkins rising, then sitting back down. I said I was given no reason upon the arrest, at the time of the arrest. Let me see if we're still moving here. Oh, God, I can't even see it. Oh, we're live, so it doesn't matter. Okay, I said I was given no reason upon the arrest, at the time of the arrest. Stern. No, you just said you were given no reason, period. Watkins. Objection. Badgering. Carmichael. Sustained. Ms. Stern, while I appreciate your thoroughness, please keep to the limits of proper courtroom procedure. Kamala. In fact, when the officer said he was doing it to search for drugs or other contraband in our rectums, it was to explain why he was raping us, not why I was placed under arrest. So technically, he did not explain why he put the cuffs on me. Carmichael. Boy, this is a lively court today. Ms. Jackson, the same thing applies to you, because when you say that, you open up a Pandora's box. Let's try to keep the back and forth to a minimum. Counsels, you're asking straightforward questions. Witnesses, you only give answers. This is not a debate. Proceed, Ms. Stern. Stern, thank you. Ms. Jackson, you stated regarding the moment of your arrest. It still seemed unprofessional to me not to scope the situation first and ask us what was going on before deciding I had to be the bad one. Unquote. Have you ever been on the force, Miss Jackson? Carmichael and Watkins both looked disapprovingly at Stern. Stern. Do you know how much could happen in the time you're asking him to go through that whole assessment and questioning in the middle of what you yourself characterized as a chaotic situation? Kamala. Well, he's not on trial for capturing and arresting of me, but it does shine a light that a jury needs to see on the question of his character and how he makes decisions, how to act. Stern. Valid point. Carmichael. I think we're getting away from what we need to be doing, and that's focusing on the facts. Ms. Jackson, less is more, especially in a court proceeding. And Ms. Stern, you should know better than to tie us up in assumptions or presumptions of assumptions. We just need to know everything that happened. But that doesn't include the very subjective aspect of second guessing. Stern. Okay then, regarding your statement that Officer Braddock treated you as the bad one, did he ever tell you that you were bad? Kamala. He didn't have to. Why else would he? Carmichael. Miss Jackson, please answer the question. Did he state to you that you were in the wrong upon arresting you? Kamala, no, he did not. That is, until we were in the room, but even then he only said he was searching for evidence of wrongdoing, not that we were wrong or bad. Carmichael, thank you, Miss Jackson. Ms. Stern, proceed, please. Stern, Miss Jackson, you stated, and I quote, this is how confrontations develop, and then when we get upset, they get scared and pull a gun on us. First, you gave a legitimate reason why he had to arrest you and ask questions later. He had to make sure you were not really trying to attack the girl who turned out to be your partner, Kamala. But why would he then not release us the moment he, Carmichael, banging gavel, loud. Miss Jackson, just answer the question. Miss Stern, just ask questions. Please, I've kept this proceeding going this long because there are two plaintiffs, and it would not be fair to your partner to deny her her day in court. Nobody says anything for a brief pause. Okay, I'm sorry. Stern, okay, Ms. Jackson, you stated, I quote, I still had faith that we'd make out better not fighting him, whether he was good or not. But you see what happened. Well, obviously, we wouldn't be here questioning you if we saw what happened. Carmichael, Counselor, please, this is not necessary. Just ask any relevant questions and let's get on with finding out what really happened. Stern, you stated, quote, it is clear that he was put off at the sight of people exercising their right to oppose the very type of injustice that underlies why he brought us in and then did what he did to us. What made it so abundantly clear to you that it was that, and not simply because one, he had to clear the area for safety, and two, as you said, to ascertain if you really were a threat or not? Watkins, Your Honor, we covered this already. What is unclear from Ms. Jackson's previous testimony? Carmichael, I am satisfied as to Ms. Jackson's testimony, and this characterization, which I agree is unprovable, does not either satisfy nor disprove the charge. Hence, I will ask that this be stricken from the record in order to maintain objectivity, but the objection is sustained so that we can move on. Stern, you first said your girlfriend, quote, expressed her outrage while you were alone with him, and then you go on to say you were both frightened out of your wits, so dared not try anything to upset him until he actually asked you to remove your clothes. Care to explain this glaring contradiction of testimony? If she was frightened out of her wits, would she not be too intimidated to express outrage? Kamala, this is where I'm going to have to take issue with the court. Carmichael, quietly. The court has no jurisdiction on the facts, only how they are presented and that they are presented. Go on, Ms. Jackson. Kamala, I do believe a person can be outraged and frightened at the same time. Some, like Samantha, have the courage to express it in spite of her fear. Stern, all right, let's just clarify then. Was she expressing outrage or was she simply exhibiting fear? Kamala, well, it's clear she was definitely exhibiting outrage at the protest, as were others. And as we all know, when Samantha gets upset, she really shows it. You also know I was trying my best to contain her within my limited power because I know the sinister nature of authority and of people in crowds. But as we were led in, her outrage did dissipate a bit, and instead of saying, you have no right to arrest us, she was instead asking, where are you taking us? By the time we were in the room, it was clear, at least to me, that her predominant emotion was one of fright more than outrage, which can only be suppressed but not eliminated. I was feeling the same outrage. My testimony makes that clear, and this was all before he did the unthinkable. Stern, that'll be all for this witness, Your Honor. To Kamala, you are a worthy opponent. A weary but triumphant feeling, Kamala steps down finally and returns to her seat, where still somewhat nervous Samantha comforts her. Carmichael, all right, I'd like to move this along, please. Glances towards Watkins. Watkins, I'd like to call Ms. Samantha Stivic. Bailiff, Miss Samantha Stivic, please come to the witness stand. Samantha and Kamala give each other a passionate hand squeeze. Samantha to say, I'm nervous, but I'm going to be brave. Kamala to say, I'm with you, baby. You're going to do great. And Samantha goes to the stand. Bailiff, Miss Stivic, do you affirm before this court that your words will contain the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Samantha, I do. Bailiff, you may have a seat. She complies. Watkins approaches her. Watkins, Ms. Stivic, don't worry. We're just going to go through the events as they happened. I know this isn't easy for you to talk about, but just try your best to recount the events as you remember them. Your partner, Kamala, stated that you were both frightened and outraged upon entry to the room, and also that the officer had grabbed you and forcibly brought you into the room. Samantha, yes. Watkins, and were you both outraged and terrified at the same time? Samantha, yes, most definitely. Watkins, please describe your outrage. Samantha, hesitant, nervous. Well, outraged that we were even arrested. Very slight pause. Outraged that we were treated so badly. Watkins, what specifically? Well, first that he did take us forcibly into the room. Watkins, how specifically? Samantha, he just grabbed our shoulders and yanked us into the room. Watkins, did he yank you because you were trying to resist? Samantha, no, we weren't trying to resist at all. I just asked where he was taking us and what he was going to do. It was frightening that he roped us away from the others, and then we found ourselves alone with him. Watkins, did you have any idea what he was going to do? Samantha, I definitely didn't expect him to do what he did. I thought he'd throw us into a cell and book us for all that yelling I did. But we still have the right to protest vocally. It's not against the law. We didn't physically harm anybody. Carmichael, calmly. Miss Stivic, you did have the right to protest vocally before you were arrested. But once a police officer puts you under arrest, even verbally, you have to follow their orders and not give them a hard time. Your partner mentioned that you kicked the officer who arrested you. I will not charge you because one, you were let go, and two, more important, because I don't expect you to know the law as these officers do, or should, especially being so young. However, it would have been different if you had used a weapon to threaten him. Then you would be charged. However, you still do not have the same rights once you're under arrest, even if wrongfully arrested, as you were, or claim you were. You have to cooperate. Thank you. She glances toward Watkins. Watkins. Did you resist him at any point in the room? I mean, did you either not follow his directions or attempt to not follow them? Samantha. We didn't have any power to resist. We had to go along. It was only when he ordered us to strip that we refused. We kept telling him he was violating his oath by taking us into a separate room and attempting to make us undress, especially after patting us down earlier. And then he eventually forced us against our will to expose ourselves to him. Watkins, I think that covers both the terror and the outrage very well. I believe your partner already described the sheer terror during the sodomizing. However, is there anything you would like to add? Samantha, only that no one should ever have to experience what we did. I lost a part of my life I'll never get back. I lost friends who now look at me like I'm a creature from the ozone. It makes Kamala's love for me all the more special. Not because she went through this with me, although that's a big part of it, but because she stood by me when I was going through my worst moments. Watkins, I'm sorry, but can you tell me how long did the sodomizing go on for? Samantha, not long, but it felt like eternity when we had no idea how long it would be. Plus, we were so scared he would do something even worse. I'm so glad that the other officer came in and rescued us. Watkins, you mean Sergeant Riley, whom Kamala mentioned? Samantha, yes. Watkins, thank you, Miss Stivic. Samantha, you mean that's all? Watkins, smiling, yes, I'm satisfied. But now Miss Stern will cross-examine you. Samantha, do I have to? Watkins starts to respond, but Carmichael, yes, you do. Just remember our exercise and just answer the questions. Samantha looks very worried as Stern steps up. Stern advancing with a warmish smile. Miss Stivic, I'm as interested in keeping this as brief as I'm sure you are, but I do want to ask you a couple of things. Your partner said you were being very belligerent during the protest and yelling real loud at the officers. That takes a lot of courage to do that, especially with these men who are clearly larger and armed. Were you aware of the danger at the time? Carmichael, Miss Stern, where are you going with this? Stern, smiling with confidence. Well, even as Ms. Jackson recounted, this was very unusual, and we see that on the body cam. For her to stand out that way, even with other protesters, who were very virulent in their words toward the cops. It's pretty amazing, especially in light of their recounting that the abuse she suffered led to her being hospitalized and not some pre-existing disorder. Would you not agree? Carmichael. If the abuse is only alleged, yes. It would make sense that the stress disorder is not post-traumatic, but an already existing disorder. But on the part of Miss Stivic. However, if what they allege is true, it would take a lot to disprove the relationship between her hospitalization and this very traumatic occurrence. Therefore, I'm going to stick with that she was indeed very worked up, as were several other protesters, and that she has a very strong voice, but I'm going to leave it there. I don't think that she, uh, I don't think that constitutes any evidence that she is making up this abuse. Please go on, but let's try and contain this narrative to information that can shed more direct light on the crime charged. Stern. Ms. Stivic, were you aware that this officer who arrested you and Ms. Jackson, who was well within his rights to arrest you for questioning and for resisting his order to clear the area? Samantha. No, because we are exercising our rights to assemble peacefully. Stern. But your partner described a very different scene than a peaceful scene. She said it was chaotic and that there were bottle throwers and looters. Are you saying your partner was wrong? And are you saying Mr. Watkins' suggestion that the officers were asking you to leave to protect you from the troublemakers was also wrong? Samantha. No, they were trying to break up our demonstration because we were demonstrating against them and telling them that Black Lives Matter. They didn't like that idea. Stern. So you gave them a hard time because the presence of those looters didn't mean anything. Watkins. Objection. Badgering the witness. Carmichael. Sustained. Miss Stern, you've made your point. Notwithstanding, Miss Stivic, Samantha, your spirit is very pure to want to exercise your First Amendment right. And I know your partner felt there was a connection between the officers and the rioters and felt, as you did, that they had no right to take it out on you by breaking the protest up. But they did have the right to, and also the duty, to keep the streets of LA safe. And the situation was getting very chaotic. And that is their job, to protect, regardless of political views. I am a parent, so I understand what it means to want to keep my child safe from danger, even when it means upsetting them. I would like to ask both of you to refrain from discussing anything that came before the entry to the room, because it is caught on the cam, and Miss Jackson more than thoroughly covered it. Stern. Ms. Stivic, why did Officer Bradock have to forcibly drag you into the private room? Watkins. Objection. Speculation. Stern. Why did you think he dragged you there with such force? Samantha. He didn't like us. Stern. How did you know that? Samantha. Oh, it was clear. You could see that in his expression. Stern. Do you think your having been so belligerent and having kicked an officer might have had something to do with that? Carmichael. Miss Stern, what are you trying to accomplish here? Are you driving at the possibility that Miss Stivic and Miss Jackson were so incensed by the officer's treatment of them that they made up this charge to get back at him? Stern. Nothing is out of the realm of possibility, Your Honor. Carmichael. Yes, but this is still a stretch. We need to establish some firm ground rules, and they are stick to the facts. If a person felt a certain way, that's for them to tell in an objective way. I was feeling sad. I was feeling angry. But no one is to surmise about anyone else. Miss Stivic and also Miss Jackson, you can't offer your opinions before a jury about why something happened. We are trying to ascertain what happened, not what you think now about it or about anyone involved. Please just state what happened, Miss Stivic, inside the room. You obviously felt forced into the room. Because of your young age and lack of experience with this, it is understandable that you felt uncomfortable and unnatural, and therefore instinctively put up a resistance. I'm less concerned with that, however, than the charged violation. Just answer Miss Stern's questions and let's move this along. Samantha. All right, I admit I was belligerent because I was upset. It seemed like the cops were picking on us and not the people up the street who were really violent. Stern. How could you know that? Did you see what was going on up the street while all your attention was on the cops who were telling you to leave? Samantha, I didn't see any cops up the street. I just saw them converging on us, boxing us in. That's what made me so mad. Stern, but that's just what you saw. That doesn't mean other cops, who you didn't see, weren't taking on those more dangerous men. Do you understand that? Samantha, yes. Stern, do you also understand that each of these officers was under a lot of stress because you were part of a large crowd? Samantha, yes. Stern, Ms. Stivic, when you were being held, as you admitted, you were equally furious at the treatment of this officer, right? Samantha, of course, and also frightened. Stern, right. So is it not possible then that in the midst of these emotions you might not have a clear memory of what happened in the room? Samantha, no, that's impossible. I saw everything that happened very clearly. Stern, you did? Miss Jackson stated Officer Bradock turned you around facing the wall and then stripped and sodomized you. How could you have seen that if your back was turned? Samantha, all right, I felt it, but it definitely happened. Stern, you just admitted you didn't see that. You didn't see who did that to you. Could not there have been a person in the room you didn't see doing all that to you? Samantha, that makes no sense. There were only three of us in the room, and I know it wasn't Kamala. Stern, you don't know that. Anything is possible. Carmichael, I think this is a bit much, Miss Stern. This is their testimony. It's either true or not. Neither side has a smoking gun on the evidence we have. Again, your best hope is that none is discovered. Do you have any further questions for Miss Stivic before we break for lunch? Stern. Yes, I do, as a matter of fact, but we can take it up after lunch. Carmichael, you may step down, Miss Stivic. Bangs gavel. Court is recessed for 1 hour. Fade out. Well, I'd love to know what all of you thought of that as I shut off my devices.